Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of the Post with BP. I'm your host, Billy Parvatam. Folks, I'm so excited today to be joined by my friend Danny Frey. Danny is currently the Director of Athletic Communications at Drake University in Iowa, formerly play-by-play for Western Illinois, as well as the Waterloo Bucks in the Northwoods League, which he did in the summer of 2017, which is how we got a chance to meet, because at that same year, that same summer, I was the voice of the lacrosse loggers. So great to reconnect with an old friend. Danny, so great to see you after so long. Hard to believe it's been 7 years.
I know, right? I I sometimes go back and think like when I go back and tell stories or tell somebody when I was in Waterloo or that was in 2017 and then now it's already 2024. So yeah, it's crazy, but good to hear from you and good to be chatting with you today, Billy.
Yeah, for sure. It's like that Morgan Wallen song, 7 summers ago, almost when we get to the summer here. But let's get right to it, Danny. I wanted to have you on because we're right in the middle of the NFL playoffs. The divisional weekend is almost upon us. So many great storylines that happened from Super Wild Card Weekend a week ago. But you look at it just to summarize: the Texans crushed the Browns 45-14. The Chiefs 26-7 over the Miami Dolphins in a game that was negative 27 degrees in Kansas City. The Packers defeat the Cowboys, probably the biggest upset of the weekend, by the score of 48-32. Jordan Love just showed out. The Lions win their first playoff game since 1991, 24-23. Jared Goff defeats the former Detroit Lion quarterback Matt Stafford in the wild card round. The Bills beat the Steelers 31-17. I think that was pretty well expected. And then the Bucks. I mean, the Eagles were the defending NFC champions coming into the weekend, and all of a sudden the Bucks, but granted, though, the Eagles were 1-6 to close out the regular season, so they were sliding, and then the Bucks at home end up demolishing them by the score of 32-9. So you look at it, Danny. What were some of your big takeaways from Wild Card Weekend? Some results expected, and then we also had some upsets.
Yeah, I mean, I think you go and you look at some of the results. I actually thought there for a while the Texans Browns game was a great game. It was going back and forth, and then Texans just pulled away. I was kind of pulling for the Browns just because of Joe Flacco and that storyline. Maybe the Texans putting it to the Browns that much. I mean, you could tell the Browns weren't built, for a deep run or anything, but for the Texans to pull away like that, not surprising at all. I think to see the Chiefs pull away from the Dolphins. You look at the Dolphins' record going into that, in not necessarily sub-zero games, but in freezing, below freezing games. So not surprising there. I'm in Des Moines, Iowa now. It's only a couple hours away from Kansas City. And yeah, it was, we got back from a road trip on Saturday night, and the actual temperature was negative 15 with wind chill of like negative 40. It was the coldest, and I'm from the Midwest, coldest that I've ever felt. Then so they had to deal with that Saturday night in Kansas City. I want to say I was surprised, but I'm a Chicago Bears fan, so maybe some people were really surprised by the Packers. I was not, because I've been used to the torture that they have caused. They have caused me throughout my entire life. And then looks like it's going to continue with Jordan Love just going from franchise quarterback to franchise quarterback. I was hoping he was good, but I literally had a nightmare going into this year that Jordan Love, I'm not kidding, Jordan Love was the guy and he took the Packers to the Super Bowl. Hope as a petty Bears fan, hopefully that doesn't happen. But man, is he good. He was making so many tough throws. I want to say that was a surprise, but I'm not surprised that the Cowboys folded. I mean, that's just what the Cowboys do in the postseason. So that's where you look at. I wasn't surprised at all by the Eagles. The Eagles were just taking, the score was surprising. I thought it would be a more competitive game than 32-9. But Baker Mayfield, man, he's I guess another guy I've always kind of liked Baker Mayfield, kind of chip on the shoulder, type guy. But just to round out the other ones, Lions Rams, best game, I think, from start to finish, of the weekend. And yeah, I think the Steelers were just kind of happy to be there, and the Bills pulled away and held on. Got a little, I have a friend of mine's a big Bills fan, and I texted him when they went up whatever they went up there, the first couple scores, this one's over. You can put it in the bags. It's the Bills though. And Steelers, they give them a little bit of a scare, but Josh Allen and company able to hold them off.
I just thought that Browns Texans game was so Browns because, here they were. They traded for Deshaun Watson, who was the longtime Texans quarterback. They give him a fully guaranteed contract. They give the Texans picks. The Texans end up selecting CJ Stroud, and he goes out there and torches their defense. And you kind of just had a feeling, oh, man, this is so Cleveland Browns. So I thought that was kind of interesting to see. But CJ Stroud, of course, really, I think, cementing himself as the runaway rookie of the year candidate. And then I was happy for the Lions, although I will say I still think Matt Stafford has the last laugh because he won the Super Bowl. So until the Lions win the Super Bowl, I don't think you can say, well, Matt Stafford didn't get the most out of leaving Detroit. But still happy, though, for the Lions to end up advancing, winning their first playoff game in over 30 years. I did want to ask you about the two teams you just talked about, the Eagles and the Cowboys. What do you think was the bigger disappointment between the two?
Probably the Cowboys. Cowboys had more. Now, if you go back to when the Eagles were 10-1, you would say the Eagles, but going into this, knowing what we knew going into the playoffs, it's definitely the Cowboys because people were still high on the Cowboys. There were, not just Cowboy apologists, but other people like, well, at least they're at home. They'll win the wild card game and then they'll probably lose in the divisional round. And then for them to not just to lose, but to lose the way they did, going down 27-7 at halftime, 21-0 before that. I mean, I turned it off, and I'm again, not kidding here. As a cynical Bears fan, I turned it off. I put on a movie. I put on, they just added the Blues Brothers to Netflix, which is a Chicago classic. I watched that, and then I watched Devin Hester highlights for 20 minutes. And then that got me feeling a little better about myself and that I keep having to rely on other teams to beat the Packers and not my own team. But that's how much I was, and obviously the Cowboys offense figured out a little bit in the second half, but gosh, I mean, to give up 48 points there, I think that's more disappointing. The Eagles were already, I think as seasons go, maybe the Eagles season, all in all is a little more disappointing with the absolute collapse they had, but they were already collapsing and it looked like they didn't want to be there in that playoff game.
The only reason I'll say the Eagles is because going into the season, I thought, man, you look at all these great quarterbacks there in the AFC. I mean, all these young quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Trevor Lawrence, so on and so forth. But it really felt like in the NFC, Jalen Hurts was kind of at the top of the pack. And then there were a lot of other unproven guys. I mean, Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott. But really after that, the list kind of started to dwindle. So I think the expectations, the Eagles barely losing the Super Bowl last year, potentially because of a defensive holding call. They started out 10-1. That's the only reason I'd say the Eagles. But of course, when you talk about the circus, everything that goes around Jerry Jones and the Cowboys, I think you can make a great argument for Dallas there as well. Are you surprised both of them kept their jobs? Because the Cowboys already announced that Mike McCarthy is coming back. And then Nick Sirianni, I guess technically they didn't say he's coming back, but they have said that they're interviewing coordinators and other people out there. So were you surprised that both teams, at least for now, it seems like, at least with the Eagles, have decided to keep their both their coaches going forward into next season, especially when you consider Bill Belichick out there, Jim Harbaugh, Mike Vrabel, and some of these other really qualified candidates?
Yeah, a little bit. But you mentioned the circus, Jerry World. I mean, they went and had a press conference today just announcing that McCarthy was coming back. That's not normally something you hold a whole press conference for, but with Jerry Jones, that's absolutely on the table. Yeah, I mean, I think Jerry Jones has kind of made it known that Mike McCarthy's his guy. I think if he's serious about actually making a run in the playoffs and winning Super Bowls, you got to make a change, but apparently he's not. It's kind of proven, in the past that he's not. And then Sirianni is interesting because you have the argument of, well, they were just in a Super Bowl, and they just had this fantastic year and they did get off to a good start, but I think it's hard to keep a job when you tank that much. Now, albeit how much the tush push went into that and how many close games they won with maybe some lucky breaks in those games to get to 10-1. I mean, it's hard to go 10-1 that you win one more game the rest of the year. But I think the Eagles have a little bit more of an argument of, well, we were just there, where the Cowboys, still haven't proven anything to go to the next step. And ultimately, as a program, as a team, you want to make that next step. And the Cowboys haven't been able to do that with Mike McCarthy.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Dallas was that they were undefeated at home in the regular season, and then the playoffs come around, and Jordan Love torches them in that defense. Which, by the way, I mean, I don't think that helped Dan Quinn's stock. I don't think that means he's not necessarily going to get a
No,
head coaching job, but you give up 48 points, that doesn't look good for you. But do you think Dak is the long term answer? I mean, here's a guy who I was looking at it. I mean, in terms of longest tenure quarterbacks with one team, I mean, Dak's right up there in terms of like most years with one team, especially when you consider all the retirements, all the quarterback changes that have happened the last couple of years. Obviously, wasn't able to get it done again. The Cowboys, as a franchise, have not made it back to the NFC Championship game since 1995. Do you think Dak is the guy for the long term? Do you think he has what it takes to lead a team to the Super Bowl?
I actually tend to think yes. I mean, he's just shown some really bright spots and some really good moments. I thought it was interesting and I liked it, but it's also like, I don't know if you want to put yourself out there like that with him in the post-game press conference. I get it. He's trying to defend his head coach who's had his back, but being like, well, you pointed at me. It's like, well, maybe you do, have to point the blame to Dak Prescott. He's obviously, yeah, you think about it. I didn't really think about it. Right, he has been there a while. I think where it's I almost passed maybe the put up or shut up time there for Dak. I think it's one of those where I guess in Dallas you can throw money around, but I don't know who else would be a better fit, there. But he has weapons, or I mean, gosh, CeeDee Lamb, what a year he had, So he's got weapons around him. So I know I started out saying yes, I think he still could, but man, he's got to prove more in the postseason though that he hasn't proven yet.
Yeah, I agree, and I think look, I
But
don't
the
know.
raw ability's there.
Yeah, for
The
sure.
raw ability's there, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say is that like, look, I don't know if he's the guy that can lead Dallas to the Super Bowl, but I think my question that I always ask people when they bring that question up is who's the alternative? I mean, unless you're making a big
Yeah.
trade to get one of these guys, like young guys like a Justin Herbert, or maybe you trade with the Bears to get a guy like Caleb Williams. I mean, who's out there that's better than Dak Prescott? I think too often we get so caught up with the end goal that we don't think about, well, hey man, sometimes this guy might be better than what's out there. So I don't know if Dak's the answer, but I think compared to what the options, realistic options are out there, I think he's the best bet you have, unless, of course, there's some trade that happens out of nowhere. I wanted to ask you, too, about the
Could be
Dolphins.
one.
I want to ask you, too, about the Dolphins. I mean, I thought overall it was a good year in the sense that Tua stayed healthy. I mean, it was kind of funny. You think about all these different injuries that quarterbacks suffer. The two healthiest guys this year were the two guys that are most prone to injuries, Lamar Jackson and Tua Tagovailoa. Unfortunately, the Dolphins, I think I read the stat, 11 straight games now that they've lost when the temperature is under 40 degrees. So it kind of feels like for them to have a legitimate chance, you almost have to have them play home field advantage. I get that one seed so that they don't have to go on the road in the playoffs. But what are your thoughts on the Dolphins season? I mean, look, I think Tyreek Hill was a long shot MVP candidate. Had he stayed healthy every game, I think he would have had a legitimate case. Tua stays healthy. Mike McDaniel is a nice young coach. So they've got the pieces there. But do you think it's a disappointment? And where do you think Tua now ranks kind of in this young quarterback conversation in terms of, is he closer to the top of the pack? Is he still mid tier, or where would you kind of rank him in that conversation?
Yeah, I think two kind of that mid tier approaching, approaching a top tier, but I would say more middle than anything, just based off of his consistency. And I'm a big Mike McDaniel fan. I mean, really enjoyed the in-season Hard Knocks. Didn't watch all of them, but we'll watch a few of those. Was able to watch a few of those episodes. Big Mike McDaniel fan. Think he's got a really clear plan there, and is everybody really, buying into what he's building there? At the end of the day, yeah, it's a disappointment end for them. But it's also, typically Kansas City had home field advantage, for them to have to go there, that was kind of a tough, just a tough matchup and a tough shake for them. But I think proven when that offense, that high tempo, and they got a lot of things going on at once. When that's clicking, they're a really dangerous team. So I don't think they have a whole lot to worry about. But yeah, with the way they were playing, going into the last few weeks of the season, it is a little bit of a disappointment from what it looked like they could have been.
Well, that's a good discussion on the wild card round. Let's now move to the divisional round, Danny, and start talking about these games and make our picks. The first game we'll talk about is the Packers at 49ers. The 49ers are currently favored minus 9.5. Of course, we just talked about it. Jordan Love had a terrific game against the Cowboys last week, 272 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. And on the other hand, you look at it, I mean, the 49ers may be the best team in the league, but they haven't played a meaningful game in 3 weeks. When you think about resting their starters a couple weeks ago, they had to bye, and now they're playing. So, you could think, hey, maybe the Niners are coming in here a bit rusty. They have played a couple of times when Aaron Rodgers was the quarterback of the Packers, and the Niners are undefeated. So, obviously, different quarterback, different teams, but I think that's something to keep track of. So, what do you think about this matchup, and who are you leaning in this matchup in San Francisco?
I mean, I have to, as a Bears fan, I have to say San Francisco and the 49ers. Also living here in Iowa, Brock Purdy, adopted son of Iowa. So he's a part-time farmer here as well in Iowa during his bye week. So for my Iowa State fans, my Iowa State friends, I have to say the 49ers. But gosh, the Packers still scare me though. They really do. That's why I think the Packers could definitely have a good game and surprise some people in this one. But I think ultimately at home with the Kyle Shanahan offense and with Brock Purdy running it and then being relatively healthy, that the 49ers should feel pretty good in this one.
I agree with you. I'm going with the 49ers. I mean, you just think about all the weapons they have offensively: Debo Samuel, George Kittle, CMC, Christian McCaffrey. I mean, it's hard to stop when you got an offense like that, and all you need is Brock Purdy to be sort of that game manager to not make mistakes. I think the Niners do take it. I'm not sure if they cover though. I think 9.5. I mean, Jordan Love destroyed the spread, which was, I think, was -7 for Dallas. So I wouldn't put it past them, but I do think the Niners are the better team overall. So we both agree there. We are going with the 49ers. The next matchup we have is Bucks Lions. The Lions currently are -6.5. Here are two guys, Danny, who have proven a lot this season: Baker Mayfield and Jared Goff. I mean, I think Baker Mayfield. I'm curious to hear who you think, but I think he's right in that conversation with Joe Flacco in terms of comeback player of the year. I think the season he's had has been incredible. The Bucks, hey, they improved from last season. I mean, Tom Brady's last season, they did not win a playoff game. This year, they win a playoff game with Baker Mayfield. So whatever happens, they've already improved from a season ago. And then the Lions had their first playoff win against the Rams, first time since '91. So I think this will be an interesting matchup because it's curious to see if either of these teams will be complacent. You've already improved especially in Detroit's case. I mean, decades. But it's curious to see how motivated they will be coming into this matchup. I think we're all excited that Detroit gets another playoff game at Ford Field. So you look at this matchup, Bucks Lions. Who do you like? Again, the spread is 6.5 in favor of Detroit.
I don't think there's ever going to be any issues of a Dan Campbell team not being motivated. And I don't think there's any issues of a Dan Campbell coach team being complacent, either. So I think that's where you got to give the edge to the Lions. You also, I think, have to give the edge to the Lions because they're at home. You mentioned their Ford Field. They're hungry, starved, for playoff success. So just saw some videos from there, and it's from last weekend. It was so loud, there. So I think that's where maybe some of that Baker Mayfield magic starts to run out, and then the Lions, end up maybe in a situation where they're one win away from the Super Bowl.
I agree with you. I'm also going with the Lions. I just think, yeah, you talked about it. Dan Campbell, he's going to be able to motivate his guys. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is one of the underrated receivers in the game. I think he's going to
Oh
have a
yeah.
big game. And Jared Goff playing with house money, but he's a guy that's been to a Super Bowl. I mean, people forget that he went to the Super Bowl with the Rams and Sean McVay. So I just trust the Lions a little bit more. I am also going with Detroit. So far we agree 2 for 2, both NFC picks. We'll see if we agree in the AFC. We now move on to that conference, and we have the Texans at the Ravens. I do want to say, Danny, before we talk about this game, I don't know if you know this or not. I'm a DC sports fan, so I root for all the teams. But my favorite athlete is Lamar Jackson. And I got a Lamar jersey earlier this year. So I'm also a bandwagon Ravens fan, if you want to call me that. So I am rooting for the Ravens in this playoffs, full disclosure. But we talk about this game, of course, in Baltimore. The Ravens are favored by -9. CJ Stroud, he had a spectacular game against the Browns. 274 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, back-to-back pick sixes for the Texans defense helped a lot. People were joking, hey, Joe Flacco got the Ravens one more win by getting the Browns eliminated. And the Ravens also have not played a meaningful game in 3 weeks. And I was looking at their schedule, Danny. They had 4 losses this year, and I'm not going to count the last game against the Steelers because that was all their backups. But other than that, they lost to the Colts in overtime. They lost to the Browns on the last second field goal, and they lost to the Steelers by 7. So this Ravens team very easily could have been undefeated. I think it's clear that they've been the best team in football all year long. So you look at this Baltimore-Houston matchup. What do you see, and who do you like?
I think it'd have to be chalk. If this, I just don't think there's just been enough that the Texans have proven consistently. Like you said, throughout the year. Yeah, CJ Stroud has been incredible, and like you mentioned earlier, by far the best rookie quarterback out of that class so far. But I just think the Ravens at home with Lamar playing the way that he has. I just think you can't go against the Ravens in this one. I don't think there's any, could be way wrong, but I just don't think there's any, huge analysis to. I think it's one of those where you don't overthink.
Yeah, I agree. Especially you look at, the Ravens blew out some really good teams at home in the regular season. They blew out Detroit, they blew out Miami, they blew out Seattle. So, when they've been at home, it's been hard to beat them. And I agree with you. I think the Ravens, unsurprisingly, will win that game as well. So we're 3 for 3 so far. I'm wondering if we're gonna have disagreement on this last matchup. Chiefs at Bills. The Bills currently are -3. This is the third playoff meeting for both these teams in the past 4 years. The Chiefs won the previous 2 matchups, but they were both in Kansas City. First time they're meeting in Buffalo. This is also Patrick Mahomes' first true playoff road game because all the previous years they had the number 1 seed. They never had to play on the road with the exception of the Super Bowl, which, like we talked about, is not a true road game. But the Bills beat the Chiefs earlier in the regular season, 2017. We'll all remember that game because, it looked like Travis Kelce might have had a play for the ages with that lateral to Kadarius Toney, but he gets called back because Toney was offsides. Mahomes throws a fit on the sideline. Bills end up winning the game. So, here's a team, the Bills, who they have beaten the Chiefs in the regular season, but when it comes to the playoffs, haven't been able to get it done. It's in Buffalo this time. Do you think the Bills get it done, or the Chiefs' third time is the charm?
I think in this one you go with the playoff experience and the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. I think it'll be I think it'll be a really good game. There's always, it seems like whenever, and you already alluded a couple of it, a little bit of it there. Whenever the Chiefs and Bills play, something crazy happens. Whether it's a shootout, they're going back and forth, or obviously what happened with Toney being offsides and the Travis Kelce lateral gets taken off the board. But the I think it's gonna be another wild game. Something weird that everyone's talking about on Monday morning is gonna happen. But I think in this you gotta give some credit there to the experience the Chiefs have. Now I'm gonna go ahead and maybe give an argument for the Bills, and that would be that this is I think playing that deep in the playoffs for so many years in a row starts to wear on you and beat you down. And I think that's what happened to the Chiefs in the regular season, but I think it's a whole new season. The Chiefs are going to be focused and determined. They know what it takes. So I think if you had to lean one way or the other, for me, it would be Kansas City, and then setting up a really intriguing championship game with the Ravens.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with you, but I'm going to go with the Bills this time around. I just think that this has been, like, to me, I think this is the best chance, arguably, for a guy like Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen to win a Super Bowl because the Chiefs have had a down year. Mahomes has been great as usual, but I think they had the most drops by any receiver this season in terms of collectively their receivers overall. Kadarius Toney, he's a butterfinger waiting to happen. But I think the Chiefs are down a little bit this year. Travis Kelce also didn't have his great a great year as usual. We wonder if the Taylor Swift, drama, if that's been a distraction for the team. But I just think the Bills are at home. They just won last week. You kind of feel like this is a down year for Kansas City. I'm going to trust that Josh Allen can get it done and that the Bills can win at home. So there you go. We finally disagreed. We were 3 for 4, but except for Chiefs and Bills, I'm going Buffalo and Danny is going Kansas City. So I was curious because your NFC Championship game would be Niners Lions, and your AFC Championship game would be Ravens Chiefs. For the record, and I'm still standing with my pick before the playoffs started last week, I predicted Ravens over 49ers to win the whole thing. Who would be your prediction based on this field and your NFC and AFC Championship games? Who do you think makes the Super Bowl, and who do you think ultimately wins?
Well, you picked the winners there for me there. So we agree there. It'd be Ravens and 49ers rematch from the Super Bowl where that was the power outage, right?
Yep, Beyonce.
At in New Orleans. Yep. So it'd be that rematch of the Harbaugh Bowl. But I would say out of Ravens 49ers, I don't know. I really don't know. Which for me, as someone who my team has not been in the Super Bowl since 2006, I like, because I think it's going to be a really good game. And that's really all I want going into a Super Bowl, is that it'd be an entertaining game, which we got last year. So I just think it would be a really great game. But I do agree. I do think that if I had to pick, I would say it would be the 49ers getting by Detroit, but a heck of a run by the Lions. And then the Ravens, in my case, with the Chiefs. But I think either way, Ravens taking care of business and, again, just playing really solid football like they have all year.
So we both agree that the Ravens and 49ers will make the Super Bowl. I don't think that's a hot take by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, I think that's chalk for the most part, but they've been the two best teams, and if it happens, I think that would be one heck of a Super Bowl to watch. Danny, I wanted to ask you, I did this ranking last week of guys with the most pressure to win in terms of players, just players, most pressure to win in the playoffs. Obviously, that the field has narrowed, so I put together a new list, and normally I do a top 5, but I really feel like, in ranking these guys, you look at it, I don't think there's any pressure on CJ Stroud or Baker Mayfield or Jared Goff to win. I mean, CJ Stroud's a rookie. Baker Mayfield and Jared Goff have already had a successful season winning a playoff game. So if any of those guys don't win, no one's going to say, oh, there was a failure. They should have won. So I'm going to rank the 4 other quarterbacks. I'm going Lamar Jackson, number 1. The Ravens have been the best team all season long. I really think this is the year for Lamar to prove the haters wrong, to say, look, a guy with my kind of style of play can win it all. So I think Lamar Jackson's number 1. Josh Allen's number 2. I mean, here's a guy that's kind of been right in the conversation with Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow for the best quarterback in the game. And like we talked about it, Joe Burrow's out of the playoffs. Mahomes and the Chiefs have had a down year. So I think this might be an opportunity for Josh Allen to lead Buffalo to the Super Bowl. Number 3, I said Brock Purdy, but I'm also going to say the 49ers as a franchise. I mean, here's a team that has been right there the last couple of years. I mean, a couple NFC Championship games, a Super Bowl appearance, but they haven't been able to get over the hump. So I do think there's a lot riding on Brock Purdy, because if he doesn't win, people are going to say, well, with Jimmy G, it was the same thing. We had a good team, but we weren't able to get it done. So I think Brock Purdy should be number 3 in the Niners as a whole. I think Lamar probably has the most pressure of any player in the playoffs. But I think in terms of a franchise, I think the Niners, because they've been there the last couple of years, would have the most pressure. And then number 4, I'm going with Patrick Mahomes. Not immediate pressure in terms of, if he doesn't win, it's a failed season, because he does already have 2 Super Bowl rings. But I just think for legacy purposes, in terms of, people are already saying this guy could pass Tom Brady, he could be the GOAT. Well, if you're going to pass Tom Brady, you need to start racking up Super Bowl championships. In my opinion, he's got to get 8 to surpass Brady, because Brady had 7 and he beat Mahomes to win a 7th one. So I think Mahomes needs to get 8. So I'm putting Mahomes at number 4, not because he needs to win it this season, but just in terms of like legacy. You can't always guarantee you're going to be that deep in the playoffs every year. So that's my list: Lamar, Josh Allen, Brock Purdy / the 49ers, and Patrick Mahomes. What do you think about that list?
I think the only one, again, I think we're in kind of lockstep here, the same wavelength. The only one I may flip-flop there is the last 2, because I just think there's, and maybe not outside pressure, but just from watching Quarterback on Netflix, what a great series that was. I feel like there's just, from internally with the Chiefs and with Patrick Mahomes on himself, he always just put so much pressure, on himself. And then with Brock Purdy, I mean, Mr. Irrelevant. But I think everything you said, comparing him to Jimmy G, and is he a franchise quarterback type guy, or is this just kind of a fluke? Couple years, which I don't feel that way at all. Those would be the only couple I think maybe to flip flop there.
I was going to ask you too, when you look at this offseason, again, I'll check my phone unless some breaking news happened, but I think that this could be the most qualified coaching free agents this offseason. When you think about it, Bill Belichick, the greatest coach of all time, Jim Harbaugh, Mike Vrabel, who I thought did a really good job in Tennessee. You got Ben Johnson, who's probably the most sought after offensive coordinator. There are currently 7 openings when you consider we're actually 6 because the Patriots hired Gerard Mayo, but you got the Chargers, Commanders, Falcons, Panthers, Seahawks, and the Raiders. So you look at those 7 openings. What do you think is the best opening of those 6? Actually, because the Patriots got filled, but of those 6, what's the best one?
So I will get to that, but first I want to say, and I know I've already sounded like a disgruntled Bears fan already, but the Bears should be on that list, especially with, like you said, with that incredible talent pool of head coaches that we haven't seen in a while. Yeah, Matt Eberflus went and turned. I know he didn't ask me this, but I'm gonna get on my soapbox and talk about it anyway. But I know Matt Eberflus turned it around, towards the end of the year when he took over play calling for the defense. I think he's a fabulous defensive coordinator. He's a terrific defensive coordinator, but that's not necessarily what you need as a head coach. You need a leader, and you need somebody that can put everything together. And I don't think he's proven that he can do that. When you have a chance to, get I'm not saying they get a Belichick, but to get a Vrabel or some of these, really talented, other coaches that are out there right now. I just think it's a missed opportunity. With that being said, that the Bears is not an opening. I think anything in LA, especially in SoFi has to be number one, for multiple reasons. But I think the Falcons may have some pieces there. I think that's why you're seeing some high profile interest in that job there. Be John Robinson and maybe not used effectively, as well. And with Art Smith. So I think you kind of follow where the high profile names are interviewing first, and you're seeing all the big ones, Harbaugh, kind of go. But then, you look at Raiders haven't been filled yet, right?
No, although Antonio Pierce, a lot of people are saying is the front runner because of the great job he did with.
He's got to get that, right? Yeah, I think he's got to get it. So, I mean, I would say again, just with location factor, and again, I think some weapons that they have there, on both the defensive side of the ball and the offensive side of the ball, Raiders would be up there. But I think Antonio Pierce should get that job. So kind of taking them out, I think definitely the top 2 would be Chargers and Falcons.
I agree with you about the Bears. I thought Jim Harbaugh would have been a great fit for them because he played for the Bears. He won a Super Bowl, near Michigan. Yes. I mean, yeah. So,
yes, no, he would have been awesome. I think the thing is I don't know if the McCaskies would love giving all of the control over to him. But I would love that. But no, and I think many Bears fans, that was the pipe dream, was to bring Jim Harbaugh home. But yeah, no, just not in the cards. But he's going to go NFL this time. I don't think this is like a few years ago when he flirted with the Vikings and maybe there's another team in there. This is he won a national title at Michigan. That's what he wanted to do. Now he's going to go back and scratch the NFL itch again.
I think the Commanders are a good opportunity as well. I mean, you think about all the cap space, new ownership. They're hopefully going to give you a lot of leeway. You got the number 2 overall pick. So I think that, the NFC East, I mean, there has not been a repeat division champion since 2005. So I don't think it's, I mean, look, if you get the right pieces in there, could you contend for a division? I'm not saying it's going to happen, but, crazier things have happened in that division. So I actually think, Danny, I said this last week on the podcast. I think, in my opinion, the best fit would be if the Chargers hire Bill Belichick and the Commanders hire Jim Harbaugh, because with the Chargers, I mean, they really need to fix that defense. Who better to bring than Bill Belichick, one of the greatest, if not the greatest defensive coach of all time. You've already got, because his whole thing has been he hasn't had the quarterback since Brady left. Well, you go to the Chargers, you've already got the franchise quarterback in Justin Herbert. So I say Bill for the Chargers and then Harbaugh for the Commanders, just because I think he'll have kind of more leeway, with new ownership, I think, to really create his own brand. And it's kind of a maybe a not that important of a factor, but I just think about it for his parents. I mean, look, you want to see both brothers coach Baltimore and Washington. I mean, same radius. And I don't know if he wants to play his brother as often as he might if he was in the AFC. So if you're in the NFC, you'd avoid him, pretty much, maybe once every couple of years in the regular season, but you wouldn't see him in the postseason until the Super Bowl. So I think Chargers for Bill, Commanders, Jim Harbaugh. What do you think about that? You think that could be a good fit?
Yeah, and then I think that the Commander's job, yeah, I think that's one I left out there. That I think it was a great GM hire that they had. You mentioned the new ownership, so I think that is a fantastic landing spot for somebody. I'm going to say this next thing, like I know the two guys, which obviously I don't, but just from things I heard, I think Belichick's going to lean more East Coast is just from what I've heard from people that do know him, is that he does kind of want to he wouldn't end up on the West Coast and he would stay more East Coast. And then I think it's kind of the other way for Jim Harbaugh, where he's always gravitated towards the West Coast, obviously with the 49ers, when he was the head coach at Stanford. He obviously played in San Diego, and then actually his first head coaching job was with a non-scholarship FCS team in San Diego, University of San Diego on the Toreros. So I think he's kind of always gravitated towards the West Coast. But I think it's a really interesting point you make with being, closer proximity to his brother with the Commanders. But that's just kind of what I think, maybe just with where their minds are at, maybe, and maybe not in what would be a good fit.
I'm curious, as a Bears fan, what should the Bears do? Should they trade the pick? Should they draft Caleb Williams? Should they stick with Justin Fields? Because again, I was thinking about it, Danny. I mean, I was surprised the Bears got 7 wins. When you think about how atrocious they looked at times in the season, all of a sudden at the end of the season, I see they have 7 wins. I'm like, wait, I had no idea they had this many wins. So, look, I mean, I think you got to give Eberflus some credits. Some improvement happened. That's probably why he kept the job. But do you think they should stick with Fields? Maybe trade the pick, draft a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. with the first pick, or do you think they, should draft Caleb Williams and trade Justin Fields? What do you think they should do with the first pick?
The Bears are actually not mathematically eliminated until about like 2 weeks to go in the regular season, which was, like you said, with how bad they have looked this year, amazing. The Bears actually needed to, when the Lions and Packers played, the Bears, because they choked it off against the Browns, the Bears needed the Lions and Packers to tie to be mathematically alive for the rest of the year. That did not happen, obviously. But I think my gut says do what you did last year, trade it and get a haul. I'm not ready. Now, if you would have asked me this middle of the season, I would have said, yeah, let's just blow everything up, get everybody out, get a new quarterback in, just everything start fresh. But they are gonna get a new offensive coordinator. Cliff Kingsbury is interviewing. I think that'd be an interesting fit. So is Zach Robinson, the Rams offensive coordinator, amongst some other names. But the Luke Getsy experiment just didn't work. He ran too many screens, Billy. He ran too many screens. He thought he invented the screen. I feel like it's an easy thing for that fans that are upset with their offensive coordinator will always, just run a screen. He ran a screen all the time, though, I'm telling you. So it'll be good to get a new face in there. But I think the team wants Fields to stay. I think that's abundantly clear. I think his receivers want Fields to stay there. I think you run into, if you go against, as a GM, Ryan Poles, if you go and a head coach, in that case, obviously has a say in it. If you go against the locker room, that could be dangerous down the line, because they're all around Justin Fields. I just I'm not ready to move on from. I think he showed just enough this year that he may be able to do enough. And then I don't know. I'm just not quite sold. I'm one of those. I'm just not quite sold on Caleb Williams yet. I feel like everybody's saying he's can't miss, but why? I mean, his numbers are good, but I don't know. I'm just not completely there yet. I don't think he's like an Andrew Luck can't, or Peyton, like people have calmed down on that a little bit lately, but people were saying that at the beginning of the year that he was a can't miss. And yeah, when I went to see the Bears play the Broncos, and yes, that was the game that the Bears blew. I can't remember it exactly as I tried to block it from my mind. But they blew a huge second half lead to go to 0-4. I was there. And after that, I was like, blow everything up, take Caleb Williams, let's go. But I think Fields has proven enough. And I think if you're the Bears, shoot, if you think Eberflus did enough, Fields had to have done enough to give him another shot. But that's just me. You're hearing a lot more reports where it looks like they might be gunning for Williams, and especially if they go with like Cliff Kingsbury. He was his quarterback's coach at USC. So I whatever. I've also come to this realization in my 27 years of life, and better part of that with watching Bears games and following along with the Chicago Bears. Whatever the Bears will do will be the wrong move. Whatever they decide on will be terrible and will not work. So I have just accepted that. And then if something great does happen, I'm pleasantly surprised.
I'm curious. You mentioned Devin Hester earlier. Is he your favorite Bear of all time?
Oh gosh. He's right up there. Actually, my favorite Bear of all time is Robbie Gould.
Okay.
The kicker.
He's good.
Is my favorite Bear of all time. He was the most consistent. He was the one that really never let us down. He had one shaky year towards the end, and then I'll never forgive Ryan Pace for not bringing him back, and then had to deal with Connor Barth, and then Cody Parkey in the Bears' last playoff appearance in the double doink. They would have kept Robbie. That wouldn't have happened. So no, Robbie Gould, all-time leading scorer for the Bears. He's probably my favorite, but just with my, in our era, Brian Urlacher, obviously is right up there. And Devin Hester. So I would say those would be my top three of players that I actually, got to see play. I have obviously watched highlights and have been told so many things about Walter Payton, from my dad. So have to have a special for in Dick Butkus, RIP, and all those guys. But of guys that I actually see and remember growing up, it would be Hester, Urlacher, and Robbie.
And that's actually a great transition into this next segment to get to know you better. Not necessarily rapid fire, but get to know you a little bit better. But so, are you a Chicago sports fan? All Cubs. Like, what are your favorite teams?
So I'm not. So I'm from Central Illinois. So we're split. We're obviously right in the middle of the state. So I am actually a St. Louis Cardinals baseball fan, and a Chicago Bears football fan. I say I'm a Bulls fan, but I don't follow the NBA that closely. But if I had an NBA team, it is the Bulls. I'll turn them on occasionally and follow along with the general storylines. Just say I'm following along, but I don't follow them as closely as I do my other teams. And then for hockey, I just didn't really grow up with hockey. It just wasn't really big where I grew up, and got into it late. And when I was in the St. Louis area, when the Blues went on their Stanley Cup run, and that was just so fun to watch and start getting into hockey more. Now I love hockey. We have minor league hockey here in Des Moines, the Iowa Wild, and I actually have a good friend of mine that's a professional hockey official. And then so I'll go to games and I just have a blast. So I'm more into hockey now. I'm saying this long-winded because I didn't want to be a bandwagon St. Louis Blues fan. Plus, I'm kind of split anyway. Do I go Blues? Do I go Blackhawks? Obviously, the Blackhawks have struggled lately, but they had their run, in the late 2000s, and early 2010s. But I didn't really want to latch on either way late there. So I said in 2019, I said, well, I'll just be a fan of the next expansion team, and that would be the Seattle Kraken. So I am a Seattle Kraken hockey fan. And they're playing great. Now they got a terrible start this year, but they've been really playing well lately. So, but my main two favorite teams are Bears and the St. Louis Cardinals.
And I'm curious, as someone from the great state of Iowa, for people around the country like myself who don't really know what that experience is like, how do you describe the Iowa State rivalry?
Oh man, it's intense. It is and I work, obviously at a school where we don't have a dog, in that fight. But yeah, it is intense. I have been to that game. I've been to that football game. I went, well, would have been the fall of 2017 after I was in Waterloo. I had some friends that went to Iowa State, and I drove over and went to that game. I mean, it's constant, you're walking on the street, and I was wearing Cyclones, gear I got from my friends, and it's constant, berating of the other, it's either you're gonna get a roll clones for Iowa State or a go Hawks for Iowa. And that's really for every sport. I mean, obviously I think everything amplifies for football, but and then lately Iowa State men's basketball has had the edge on Iowa men's basketball just in the past couple years. And obviously Caitlin Clark at Iowa. She's just amazing. I saw her play in person last year, just incredible. So obviously they have it on the women's basketball side, but it's you just go on, X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, and social media. I mean, fans are at, whether it directly concerns an Iowa and Iowa State game playing directly, they're going to be firing shots at each other whenever they can. It's a big thing.
I'm curious, how did you end up at Drake? I mean, I was reading, obviously I knew you from your time in Waterloo with the Bucks in 2017, and then, you obviously did stuff for Western Illinois, your alma mater. So, well, how did this journey take you to Drake, where you're director of athletic communications for several other teams?
Yeah. So I think just kind of how it led to athletic communications was that after the Waterloo Bucks, went back for my senior year at Western Illinois. And I was kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Did I want to stay in play-by-play? Did I want to try to do the baseball play-by-play thing? I had interned in our athletic communications office as a student, but that was just something I just thought was fun, just wanted to help out and do. I didn't really think that was a career option yet. Or did I want to do TV sports? And I almost ended up in market like 172 in Quincy, Illinois, where I was a finalist to be a weekend sports anchor at two stations there. Actually, I was the runner up at both around the same time, but didn't get it. And I think in the end that worked out for the best. But I thought, man, maybe, okay. So I'm like, maybe I don't want to do that. So then I tried the minor league baseball, route, and gosh, Billy, and I'm sure you know this. I applied at, hundreds of places, sending my demo in, resume and all that. And I mean, hundreds maybe an exaggeration, but probably at least like 70 some, and I probably interviewed at like 6 of them, so that was just kind of a grueling process, and just how competitive it is for radio play-by-play. And I did end up I did end up with the Peoria Chiefs, affiliate of a single A affiliate of the Cardinals. So, my favorite team, growing up. And there's only about a little over an hour from my hometown. So I thought that worked out great. But after that process, I was kind of like, man, I don't know if this is maybe going to be it, long term. I can go through this every summer, type, or, every, where leading up to try to get to the summer. So Western Illinois, asked if I'd be interested in staying, as an athletic communications graduate assistant, and Peoria is close enough to Macomb, Illinois, where Western Illinois is, that it's like an hour and a half or so, that I was able to make it work, where I started, because I graduated semester in the winter. So I was able to start in, which, by the way, I had a stretch there where all I was doing was play-by-play for the Western Illinois women's basketball team while living in a college town. It was awesome. It was the best. I didn't have to do, I just woke up, I did my prep for the games, and then we'll go on the road when we went on the road. And then that was it for 3 months. It was the best. But short-lived, but it was the best. And then I started in that March with the Peoria Chiefs. I was the number 2 broadcaster and media relations assistant, and was there, did the whole year. I did home games, went on a few road trips, mainly where our number 1 didn't want to go is where I went. No, it was, but that was really fun. There's still about 3 interns there that we're still really close, and talk all the time, and that's what this is all about, is the relationships. But I knew that maybe that's not what I wanted to try to do, play-by-play full team, though I loved it. And so then kind of starting the SID, sports information director, world, as athletic communications GA at Western Illinois. And then I wasn't quite done. That started in 2018. I wasn't quite done with baseball, though. Summer of 2019, I went to the Gateway Grizzlies. Again, was the number 2 broadcaster and media relations assistant. They are an independent team. So those guys playing for the love of the game, in the Frontier League. It's just outside of St. Louis. And that was a great experience. What the Gateway Grizzlies are known for, by the way, is the Krispy Kreme donut burger. Baseball's best burger. They slice a Krispy Kreme donut in half, and they put the glazed side down into a bacon cheeseburger. I only had one that summer, but it actually works. It's actually really good. But I limited, I only had one that summer. Did that just I had to have an internship for my master's degree. Because that was another thing I wanted to go back as a GA. It's like, my master's would be covered. And I know that I probably wouldn't get my master's any other way. So, might as well go and get it now. So I got my master's degree in sport management from Western Illinois. And then while I did that, the radio announcer left for a great opportunity. So then that kind of left me there to kind of fill in that role. So then I became the voice of Western Illinois men's basketball for 2 years, and then Western Illinois football for that following year for 1 year. And that was awesome. And then kind of got through that, was wrapping up my degree in school, and then COVID hit. So when COVID hit, it was kind of like, because originally I was like, if there's a way I could stay at Western, still be the voice of Leathernecks, I was really interested in doing that. But it just timing and that stuff just didn't work out. Not a whole lot of places were hiring. If anything, staffs were kind of shrinking, at that point. So there was a athletic communications job that opened up at West Virginia Wesleyan College in Buchanan, West Virginia, population around 5,000. I never heard of West Virginia Wesleyan College. I've never been to the state of West Virginia. So I ended up sort of in your neck of the woods. But interviewed there, really liked the people, over Zoom, and went out there in July of 2020. And I was there for about a year and a half. And I actually still got to do play-by-play there for pretty much all of their home games for about every sport. I did lacrosse, had no clue what I was doing. Did volleyball and loved it. Volleyball was a really fun sport to call. Yeah, just really, really enjoy. Again, met people there that I have relationships with that there's a group chat of us that we still text weekly. So we were talking about the NFL playoff games. We have a Lions fan, a Bucks fan, a Packers fan, a Steelers fan. I'm missing one. They're all in that. So it was hopping this last weekend. No, so that was awesome. And then I'm getting there, Billy. Then to get to Drake, yeah, I always want to get back to the Midwest. I'm kind of a Midwestern boy at heart. And I had a good friend of mine that was at Drake. Reached out to him about the job opportunity and applied and got it. It was tough leaving Wesleyan because I really was close with that group there. But it was a really good opportunity to work with some outstanding teams, and also the Drake Relays, which is an incredible event. It's America's Athletic Classic, but it's a huge track and field meet that has entrance all the way from middle school to Olympians, at the pro level, and it's really a really big high school deal as well, here in the state of Iowa. But it's not just a track meet; it's a whole week-long event in Des Moines. So being in charge of communications efforts for that, I thought was a really, really cool challenge. So took that. So I've been here for 2 years, have stepped back from the play-by-play side of things. I've filled in here and there on some things, but work more behind the scenes on the communications and media relations side of things. I love it. I love having a front row seat to games and being able to work with student athletes and coaches and on a day-to-day basis is just really, really fun. And it's been a joy.
Yeah, can you talk about I know it's going to be tough because obviously it depends on the sport, but your day-to-day your job on an average, because I saw your football, women's soccer, golf, cross country, men's basketball, track and field, Drake Relays, like you just talked about. I mean, what is your day-to-day job like? What are kind of some of the key components of your job?
Yeah, so we always do. I'm just kind of thinking based off of, so I will update our website, godrakebulldogs.com. So making sure that that's up to date with previews and recaps. So if there's a game coming up for the sport, I was just before we hopped on, I was cranking out a couple quick previews. We'll put out a preview, story with just some quick headlines of what's going on, make sure to have all the links that everybody will need on game day. Put that in there. So making sure that previews are done. On a typical day, I mean, for me, kind of in my role, it's making sure everything's in place for the game days coming up. So we don't have a staff, photographer here. So we use some awesome freelancers. They're incredible. So I'll schedule them out, make sure we have a photographer at the game, make sure that we have our stats covered. Some of the stats, me and my staff will just do ourselves, but then other times we'll need to, bring in. So for basketball, for instance, we do get a lot of volunteer help and a lot of freelance help that'll come in on a game day. So making sure those people are scheduled. And then it's just, you may have a press release to write, it's coaches, hiring, coaches, is moving on. We're, we're hosting this event, because in Des Moines, it's a good enough size city. It's a great city, that we end up hosting a bunch of things. So, just whether it's a kind of a topical press release, like that we could put out, it's making sure rosters are up to date, and bios are up to date. It kind of varies. There's not a very standard day to day. On a game day, I'm, making sure that, game notes are done, for basketball, getting those printed, making sure that we got credentials for everybody who's requested them. That's really big for the Drake Relays. And just just kind of making sure to kind of dumb it down, maybe a little bit, just kind of make sure everything's ready, for that game day. And then ultimately we'll do the recap after the game, coordinating with media, making sure that they can show up, on time, and have everything that they need. Just different things like that. But it's a setting up interviews. The media want to talk to people beforehand. It's just kind of a hodgepodge of things. It kind of depends on the day, but I like that. I like that stuff.
Dan, you've been so gracious with your time. My final question for you here is how we interacted, how we met, and that is with the Northwoods League. You were with the Waterloo Bucks, like I talked about. I was with the Lacrosse Loggers. What are some of your favorite memories from that season? I mean, I tell people all the time. I think for broadcasters, that's really the. I know Cape Cod gets all the attention, but the Northwoods League, if you're a broadcaster, that's the number one league you can go to, summer collegiate wood bat league, that helps prepare you for the minor leagues if play by play is something you want to do, especially in baseball. And I gotta say, you're a better man than me, because Waterloo, man, that place was humid. I mean, I remember I was crying tears of sweat with how humid it was, especially in the summer. But what are some of your great memories from your summer there in 2017? And I would like to add, obviously you knew this, but you won the Northwoods League play by play of the year
So,
that year, so that must have been a nice
so
honor as well.
it
So
was. It was with Mike Keeley from Rochester and the Hawkers, who's a great guy. And still, he's a minor league hockey broadcaster now. But great broadcasters of the Hawkers. Yeah, I don't know. I think I just got that because I honestly, just because I think I just try to be nice to everybody that came in. I tried to be welcoming. Billy maybe disagree, but I tried to be welcoming. I tried to always have, Gatorades, water and stuff in our fridge up there. We had a decent sized press box compared to other places. So I just, yeah, I think it was more of the hospitality. I tried to have game notes, tried to have different things for folks. So I think more than my skills than anything, I think that may maybe help me out. But no, it was awesome. You're right, where it really prepared you. It's like, is this something you want to do? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was 72 games in 77 days.
Yep.
Or something like that.
Yep.
And then did you and Cross, did you do those day night double headers?
Oh yeah, those were a blast,
Play
especially
at
in different
11
cities.
and
Yeah.
7?
Yep. In different
Yeah.
cities.
Yeah. So we did in different cities. So our travel partner was Rochester, Minnesota. So we did that one time. And then another time we just hosted a day night doubleheader. Both games, you're playing the Bismarck Larks in their inaugural season. And I'll never forget this. We drove back from Duluth, Minnesota to Waterloo, Iowa. And I don't know if we got going late or there's or something, but we didn't get back home until 6:30 in the morning. And then we had to play the next day. And I say we, like I played in the game. All I did was sit and talk. But the Bucks had to play the next day against Bismarck at 11 in the morning. And we got back at 6:30. So I took like a 2-hour nap and then went into the ballpark and made sure that everything was set. But it was insane. And not just to play a game at 11, you had to play another game at 7. And I will never forget, we won both of those games. Bucks swept. Yeah, I never forgot. I was, maybe it's not so bad, but no, it was, I remember that was brutal. But fun, but no, it was a really, really cool experience. I just remember interacting with the guys. Our team was awesome, full of characters. I love my time in Waterloo because we had awesome, and they still do. He's still there. I mean, just awesome management there. The general manager Dan Corbin is a terrific guy. He is a big University of Northern Iowa supporter, and they're in Drake's conference. So I will see him once or twice a year, and he'll yell out at me, and we'll go and say hi. And he's just a terrific guy, and he really gave me a lot of space to kind of do whatever I needed to do. And instead of being forced to maybe do some other, intern type things, which are fine, I've done them, places, but that maybe some other places had to do, they were like, no, focus on, your game prep, focus on writing things, and getting ready for the broadcast. So that I always really appreciated that. But everybody in their front office was awesome. Our manager, Scott Douglas, is fantastic, just a great guy. Always funny to talk to. And he would always sit across from him on the bus, so he'd always make me laugh. But he was genuinely unique and wonderful human being as well. Yeah, no, just that's what kind of, I think what stands out maybe memories wise is, yeah, some of those road trips. I mean, Billy, how many times did you guys eat at Pizza Ranch? We ate at Pizza Ranch a lot.
Yeah, it was like pizza, pulled pork. I mean, if you want to eat unhealthy, you got to join a Northwoods League team. I mean, it was just, yeah,
Yeah,
like you talked about it. Yeah,
mac
days
and
on end.
cheese. I will say, if you went to Bismarck had actually like good food. They had like grilled shrimp and like smoked wing. They had like good stuff. I was, man, we just play here all the time. But in some places are definitely better than others. Do you remember staying in the dorms?
Oh yeah,
At Wisconsin Superior in Duluth?
yeah.
I will say though, Duluth, I thought Wade Stadium was one of the coolest stadiums that we went to. And that we got to broadcast outside on that little bandbox
Yeah.
area. I thought that was awesome. I thought that was really cool and just unique compared to some other places. And I love that we got to travel. I think that was the other thing too, that we got to travel to every game, even though, sometimes, yeah, it was 72 games in 77 days. And I mean, I almost didn't know what to do on off days there, because we just weren't used to having them. But no, it was it was really fun. Just how and we were at the time, now I'm sure there's more now, but at the time we were at one of the only two ballparks that had video boards.
Wow.
As well, because Lacrosse had one and Waterloo Bucks got one because they're owned and operated by the same group as the Cedar Rapids Colonels. So they were able to get that in. But no, and I think just interacting with broadcasters too, was fun. I mean, I just, as you can tell, I can, kind of just blabber on here, but I really do. I love talking about that. I'm glad you brought it up. Because I'm sure my friends now just get sick and tired of me bringing up stories, from minor league baseball and Northwoods League and what have you. But I think the fraternity of broadcasters we had there, at least when we were in the West Division. The East was like mainly all the Wisconsin ones, obviously minus Lacrosse and Eau Claire. But it was just a good group of guys. Obviously you, Billy. Someone who I'm actually still close with and lives in Des Moines right now is Ryan Russell of the Wilmer Stingers.
Oh wow.
If you remember Ryan,
Yeah.
Ryan is actually a news producer here in Des Moines. So we've actually, linked back up, and there have been times where I need to get something on the news and I just call Ryan. So that was a nice connection, to have. But Ryan's awesome. But we were always close. But yeah, no, it was fun. Did the Loggers make the playoffs when you were there?
They did not, but I hate to bring it up, but I do remember, the Bucks were kind of in. So those, especially that first summer, those were some of my favorite memories. Was when those Loggers Bucks matchups. That's kind of actually was going to get to my
Good.
question of where did Lacrosse kind of rank in visits? Because I thought when it was a playoff game or when it was at the end of the season a big game. I mean that crowd. I know the press box was small, but that crowd made it amazing to call a game at.
It was really fun. The crowds were always awesome. You guys always did a great job of packing people in there. I love the log cabins out in the outfield. That was just a really cool aesthetic, especially for a team called the Loggers. That was cool. No, love going to Lacrosse. Lacrosse would rank up there. Yeah, press box a little cramped, but other than that, always had great hospitality from you, Billy, of course. So Lacrosse would be up there. I'm trying to think of where else.
Mankato. That was before they had the new stadium, I think. Mankato
Yeah, that was Franklin P. John. That was right. Franklin P. Johnson, the Frank.
Mhm.
or Franklin P something.
Yep.
That was their
St.
ballpark, the
Cloud was pretty good.
Moondogs. It was, yeah, Joe Faber Field. Yeah, yep. Because that's where St. Cloud State would play there as well. So that was, yep. St. Cloud was solid. I would say the accommodations that I alluded to with Duluth were at the bottom. But again, I love their stadium. They had like a really low level professional wrestling before the game when we played, and that was awesome. I remember going over there with our pitchers down in the bullpen. That was down in that corner in this concourse areas where they set up the ring before the game, and we were just watching, kind of D level professional wrestling. It was awesome. That was cool.
Where did Thunder Bay rank for
That
you in
was
terms of the travel and the passport? And I thought the dorms actually weren't. I thought the dorms were better than Duluth, but obviously the travel getting there was tough.
They were, because you had a suite like there, which was nice. Yeah, getting there was it was just a long drive, but other than that, it was fine. We played 2 games there in a row. What I remember from there is that we won both games because Thunder Bay was down that year, and we won both games, and then we went out to celebrate at a Boston Pizza, which is like their version of like an Applebee's or a TGI Fridays, but it was right by the dorm.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember being there with the players and hanging out at the BP at the Boston Pizza after. That's what I remember about Thunder Bay. No, that was, I'm trying to think. Gosh, am I missing anywhere here? I liked Eau Claire, Carson Park, historic ballpark, with Hank Aaron, playing there and all that. So that was cool. I almost got drilled. Do you almost get drilled by a foul ball there?
I did as well. Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but for me, it's like I'm covering the equipment that I don't, and my laptop, like that costs way more. I just went into like duck and cover mode. And I know some of the guys on the team, gave me crap for that, but yeah, it shot right. I still have it somewhere. But I have that foul ball, with the Northwoods League logo on it. But no, that was up there.
Rochester.
Yeah, that was always a close trip for us. We never stayed there, so we just would go up there and come back. What was it? Who was the guy there from Texas, Zach Zubia, that set the home run record?
Yeah, that's right.
But that's because he played, not taking away what he did, he was a heck of a hitter, but that was a really tiny bandbox of a stadium.
Yeah.
That was a tiny stadium there. But yeah, that was all right. That was our closest trip, which was nice.
Wilmer was a small press box too.
It was, yep. Yeah, you're kind of all there in one area. What's other than the humidity, what'd you think of Waterloo and old Riverfront Stadium?
Oh, I thought it was great. Like you talked about, the press box was huge. I thought your PA guy, Elwin, he's one of the great guys in the league. So, obviously
I love Elwin.
Yeah, you were a great guy, but just top to bottom, I thought Waterloo, one of the best hospitable teams in the league. It was always fun to go there.
Yeah, we tried to be, and then I think having like the video board kind of helped to the game, as with you guys, like helped to the game, experience. We had an MC who was really good, Connor Kenny. Who's like a local radio guy. So no, we tried to really do. I will say, one memory I remember from Waterloo. I don't remember this guy, but we had a guy. We just called him Baseball Head Guy because he wore like a kid's Halloween mask as like a baseball, but that would cover your like whole face. But because it was made for a child, he couldn't fit it, so he just wore it on his head. And then he would always lead. We would play Moni Moni by Billy Idol, and he would always lead the "Hey, hey, what do you say? Let's go Bucks" chant. So that's one of the things I remember. We had we used to. I remember. I'm sure you remember the Loggers. The fans, the diehards, were awesome. I mean, just seeing them in, night out. That's what makes minor league baseball and summer ball, spectacular. And in my opinion, to me, at the end of the day of everything, it comes down to the people.
For sure. Well, Danny, this has been such a pleasure getting a chat with you. First of all, getting to reconnect after 7 years we were in the Northwoods League together, and hearing all the great things you're doing, talking NFL playoffs, and now with Drake University. I still remember you were one of the great guys in the Northwoods League, having that I met that summer, and you were very well deserving of that Northwoods League co-broadcast for the Summer Awards. So thanks so much for your time, man. It's been great to reconnect. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. You've been too kind, Billy. Great chatting with you.
Well, thank you so much to Danny Frey, Director of Athletic Communications at Drake University, for joining me on the latest edition of the Post with BP. We talked about the NFL Divisional Round upcoming this weekend. We hope you enjoyed that and had a chance to reconnect and reminisce about our time in the Northwoods League together. Like I said, this has been the latest edition of the Post with BP. Thanks again to Danny Frey. I'm your host, Billy Parvatam. We'll see you next time.